right, let's jump right into a topic that can cause a whole lot of stress: the cracked tooth. Today, we're going to clear up all the confusion around this diagnosis. We'll be looking at a big review from 2022 to figure out what it really means when your dentist says you have a cracked tooth, and what the science actually says we should do about it. So, let's get into it. So, have you ever been in that chair when the dentist leans in and says, "Yep, looks like you've got a cracked tooth"? Your heart just drops, right? You're probably picturing the absolute worst case scenario. It sounds so final, like a death sentence for your tooth. But here's the thing: it's really not that simple at all. And that's really the heart of the problem. You see, the research makes it super clear that there's no single agreed upon rule book for how dentists should handle a cracked tooth. That means you could go to 3 different dentists and get 3 totally different treatment plans. And that's why it's so incredibly confusing for us, the patients. Okay, so first things first, let's get on the same page. What is a cracked tooth, really? I mean, the term gets thrown around all the time, but it actually has a very specific meaning. And it's probably not what you're thinking. Okay, so here's the official definition, straight from the research. It's an incomplete fracture. That is the most important word here. We're not talking about a tooth that's just split in two. Think of it more like a crack in a windshield that starts on the chewing surface and slowly creeps its way down toward the root. And here's where it gets really interesting. The researchers who wrote this review actually say that the term you hear a lot, cracked tooth syndrome, is, and I quote, rather misleading. So why would they say that? Well, it's because the crack itself isn't the actual problem we need to worry about. This is the key insight right here. The physical crack, it's just a doorway. The real danger is that this tiny little fracture becomes a super highway for bacteria. They can travel right from your mouth, down that crack, and get deep inside the tooth, where they can infect the living nerve tissue, what dentists call the pulp. Which brings us to the most critical part of this entire discussion. Seriously, if you remember one thing, make it this. Because every single decision about what to do next, it all boils down to the answer to one single vital question. So what is it? What's the deciding factor that determines the fate of that tooth? You might think it's how big the crack is, right? Or maybe where it's located, or even how old you are. Nope, it's none of those things. It all comes down to the health of the pulp, that living nerve right in the center of the tooth. Is it healthy and alive, or is it unhealthy and, well, on its way out? That one answer, that's what sends us down 2 completely different treatment paths. And this is that fork in the road, laid out plain and simple. On one side, you've got path 1, a vital pulp. That just means the nerve is still alive. It might be perfectly healthy, or maybe it's just a little irritated, something dentists call reversible pulpitis. On the other side, you have path 2, a non-vital pulp. This is where the nerve is already permanently damaged or has died off. The fancy terms for that are irreversible pulpitis or necrosis. So let's start with the good news and take a look at path 1. All right, path 1. This is the scenario where you've got a crack, but the nerve inside is still alive and kicking. So, what's the game plan? Well, the options are actually pretty straightforward and maybe less aggressive than you'd think. So the research shows there are basically 2 main options here. First, your dentist can place a restoration, something like a filling or a crown. The idea is to basically brace the tooth, hold it together, and most importantly, seal off that bacterial superhighway we talked about. But get this, if the tooth isn't bothering you at all, the review says that just keeping an eye on it, actively monitoring it, is a totally valid approach. Just watch and wait. And the best part? The prognosis for this path is fantastic. The data is super clear. When a cracked tooth has a healthy, vital pulp, the survival rates for both the nerve and the tooth itself are incredibly high. That's some seriously good news, right? Okay, but what about the other path? What happens when those bacteria have already won the battle and the nerve is damaged beyond repair? Well, this is where a root canal comes into play. And, for years and years, this diagnosis, a cracked tooth needing a root canal, was seen as a really, really bad sign. Pay close attention here because this is a huge mythbuster. The old way of thinking was that if a cracked tooth needed a root canal, it was pretty much doomed, a lost cause. But the latest evidence, it tells a completely different story. The research is showing that as long as the tooth is restored properly afterward, and that usually means getting a crown, the prognosis is actually good. I mean, get this. The review actually found that the crack itself was not a major reason for the tooth to be lost later on. The long-term success was about the same as a non-cracked tooth that also needed a root canal. Let me say that again. The crack itself doesn't automatically mean failure, as long as you protect the tooth after the treatment. Whew. Okay, so after all of that, what's the big takeaway? We figured out what a cracked tooth is, we've busted some old myths, and we've gone down those two different paths. Let's wrap it all up into one simple, clear conclusion. This right here is your cheat sheet. Honestly, if you forget everything else, just remember this. It all comes down to one thing: the health of the nerve. If the nerve is alive and vital, the plan is simple: restore it or just watch it. And the outlook is great. If the nerve is non-vital, the plan is a root canal and a crown. And the outlook is still good, about the same as any other tooth that needs a root canal. So, is a cracked tooth a dental dead end, or is it just a new direction? Based on what we've seen, it's definitely not a dead end. The next time you or someone you know hears those words, cracked tooth, you'll know it's not a final verdict. It's just a fork in the road. The real question isn't if the tooth can be saved, but simply which path we need to take to keep it healthy for years to come. Thanks for watching.